Most men spend years saying all the right things and still lose the moment, not because of what they said, because of what they didn't know. There are two phrases, just two, that reach a woman on a level that bypasses logic entirely. They don't flatter, they don't perform, they do something deeper. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why they work and how to use them in a way that feels completely natural. Stay with me, because the second one is the one most men never discover. You've probably been told to be more confident, to say the right compliment, to show interest without showing too much. And maybe you've tried all of it and still felt like something was missing, like you were speaking a language that almost worked but never quite landed. That's not a failure of effort. That's a failure of information. Nobody sat you down and explained how a woman's emotional brain actually processes language. School didn't cover it. Nobody in your life taught you this. You were handed the social script that every man gets and told to figure out the rest alone. The fact that you're here asking deeper questions already tells me something about you. Most men never even look for this. You're not most men. Welcome back, where we decode female psychology and attraction so that the men who are paying attention finally understand what's really happening beneath the surface. I've spent years studying thousands of interactions between men and women, and what I keep finding is this: women are already communicating everything. Most men just don't know how to hear it. Here's what you need to understand before we get to the phrases themselves. When a woman feels emotionally safe, her brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone that creates feelings of closeness, trust, and yes, deep attraction. The thing about oxytocin is that it isn't triggered by impressive words. It's triggered by felt experience, by the sense that someone truly sees her, not her surface, but the part of her she doesn't always show. Most communication between men and women stays on the surface: facts, plans, small talk. But these two phrases cut through the surface entirely. They activate something older and more instinctive in her emotional brain. They make her feel something she rarely feels genuinely understood. Here's exactly how it breaks down. The first phrase is this: I noticed that about you. Not you're beautiful, not you're smart. Those are conclusions. This is something different. This is evidence. When you tell a woman you've noticed something specific about her, the way she lights up when she talks about something she loves, the way she pauses before she says something real, you're showing her that you've been paying the kind of attention most people don't pay. Her emotional brain doesn't hear this as flattery. It hears it as recognition, and recognition is one of the deepest human needs there is. Oxytocin begins to rise. The walls she keeps up with people who don't really see her, they start to soften. Picture this: you're having a conversation over coffee, and she's been talking about the trip she took years ago that changed something in her. She didn't mean to go that deep. And you say quietly, I noticed that about you, the way certain experiences stay with you. She goes still for a moment, not because the words were clever, because they were true. She feels found. That's not conversation, that's connection. But here's where it gets interesting. There was a man named Thomas, 61 years old, recently retired teacher, quiet dresser, the kind of man who always listened well, but never quite knew what to do with what he heard. He was at a community garden event, standing near a woman who'd been talking about her late mother's roses. He'd been genuinely moved by what she said, but when the moment came, he said nothing. He smiled and moved on. He told me later that he kept thinking about that conversation for days, not because of what happened, because of what he let pass. He had felt something, he just hadn't known it was permission to say. So that silence wasn't humility. It was a missed door, and she walked through it without him. Pause here for a second, because if moments like that sound familiar, the next phrase is the one that changes how you move through all of them. The second phrase is this: you don't have to explain that to me. Think about how rare this is. Most people in a woman's life, even people she loves, ask her to justify her feelings, to defend her reactions, to be more logical, more reasonable, more measured. She has spent years translating herself for other people. When you say these words and mean them, something in her nervous system releases, not just emotionally, physically. The tension she carries from constantly being asked to explain herself simply drops. Her body registers safety before her mind has even caught up. This is emotional anchoring. When a specific person becomes associated with a felt sense of relief and ease, her brain begins to link being near you with that feeling. That's not a technique. That's biology. Imagine she's telling you about a decision she made that didn't make sense on paper. Leaving a job, cutting someone off, following something she couldn't explain. She's already bracing for the question, but why? Instead, you say, "You don't have to explain that to me." She looks at you differently in that moment, not because you agreed, because you gave her something almost no one does, permission to simply be. Most men miss this entirely. Don't. If this is making sense so far, take a moment and save this video. What comes next matters just as much as the phrases themselves. Now, and pay close attention here, the reason these two phrases carry so much weight isn't just what they say, it's what they signal. They signal a man who is present, a man who pays attention, a man who doesn't need her to perform or explain or simplify herself for him. That quality, that rare, specific quality, is what creates what women describe as emotional safety. And emotional safety is the foundation of everything that follows: closeness, trust, desire. She doesn't surrender to a performance. She surrenders to a presence that makes her feel like she can finally exhale. She won't say it out loud, but she'll keep coming back to it. So, here's what you now understand. I noticed that about you tells her she is seen, really seen, without being reduced to a category. You don't have to explain that to me tells her she is accepted without conditions. Together, they do what hours of impressive conversation cannot. They create the felt sense that you are someone she can trust with the parts of herself she usually keeps hidden. This isn't about technique. This is about understanding what a woman's emotional world is actually asking for and being the rare man who can meet it. The man who speaks this language doesn't need to chase. He simply shows up and she notices. If this opens something for you, subscribe and hit the bell. I release new perspectives every week for the men who are actually paying attention. Drop the word "noticed" in the comments if this gave you a new way of seeing things. I read everyone, and before you go, there's something important you need to see next, because knowing these phrases is only part of it. My next video shows you exactly when and how to use them, the timing, the context, the energy, so they land the way they're meant to. Without that piece, you'll have the words, but miss the window. She's already telling you who she is. Now you know how to listen.